Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the book of Job. I know this video is finding you late, as I've been trying to get it at 7 a.m., getting it out at that time, so you guys can at least know when the video is going to be posted. But I've been struggling here for the last few days, and today, obviously, is it's the worst. It's the latest. Well, actually, not the latest, because I was like a whole day late. Anyway, we're going to get that fixed. We're going to get back on track. But today is not that day. But what we are going to do today is we're going to talk about the book of Job. And we've been reading in Job, and we've seen a lot from Job, and there's a lot of back and forth going on between Job and his friends. And here in chapters 29 and 30, Job is going on this long speech where he's basically starting to kind of feel himself a little bit and enter into the woe is me type territory. So let's break this down. So we begin in chapter 29 where Job is looking back on the life that he used to have. And so he's kind of looking back on the good old days, if you will. And in verses 1 through 11, Job is he's longing for the days when he was held in great honor by all who knew him. And he was. The children would run and hide from him because he was such a great man. The old men would rise when they saw him coming out of respect. They would take off their hats and they would bow to him. When he came, all the others would quit talking. Even the princes and the nobles were silent. They waited for Job to speak. Nobility didn't even speak in his presence unless they asked him to do so. So Job, and these are things Job is saying about himself. And so Job is kind of feeling himself a bit here, but he's also remembering those times when it seemed like he had it all. He was an important guy. He was Job. And then now all of that is coming, it's falling away from him. And he once was respected for what he did. And that's what he talks about in the second half of that chapter from verses 12 to 25. So before his sufferings began, Job championed the helpless and he punished the wicked. Job sat at the very top of the totem pole of life. He dwelt in honor, affluence, and influence. He was a big deal, right? He was an ideal man, the goal toward which humanity is striving today. If you were talking about the perfect person, the man that you want to be, it was Job, and he was there. He lived a good life, and he knew what abundant living really was. He even lived as God wanted because he cared for those that no one else cared for. But Job was living in a fool's paradise. He was in a Cinderella world, and when the clock struck midnight, his chariot turned into a pumpkin. Remember what he said in chapter 3. For the thing which I greatly feared has come upon me, and that which I was afraid to come unto me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came. The bomb fell on Job. He had dreaded something just like this. He had feared that all of this material substance that he had could be wiped out and taken away from him in a moment. And it was. He had nothing to fall back on. Even his friends didn't cushion his fall. In fact, they made him fall with a terrible, resounding crash. Job had been putting on his self-righteousness. Listening to him again in verse 14, he says, I put on righteousness and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem. 52 times he uses the word I and me, but we hear no confession, no admission of failure. We see nothing of a broken and contrite spirit in Job. All he's thinking about is himself, and he's looking back on those bad times, or he's looking back on those good times, and he's longing for them. And so then in chapter 30, Job is mocked even by the lowly. So they're making up like dirty little rhymes about him, and they ridicule him in song. He knew what it was to be the object of derision led by young hoodlums. Job was struggling here, okay? The young people were coming after him. They're mocking him. They're making fun of him. And so this is quite the fall from where he was, where they respected him so much that now they're just mocking him. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little tired of listening to Job here. Job is complaining. He's whining. He sounds really whiny. And you might be able to understand where he's coming from, right? He's done nothing wrong, and God has allowed all these things to happen to him. We understand that. We can sympathize with that. But come on, Job. Throw yourself a pity party and get over it, right? So first he was boasting about the outstanding man that he used to be. And now he's looking for sympathy. I was such a great fellow, but now look at me. I was such a great guy. And who's to blame for that? Well, God is to blame. So there are a lot of Christians that are in that same position today. It's possible to be blaming God, but to do it in a very pious way. I had all those blessings. I was so active. I did kind things for people, but look at me now. Well, whatever it is that has happened, it's because God is good, never because God is not good. Whatever happens is because God is working out something beneficial in the life of a believer. God was doing that same thing with Job. God knew that Job was his faithful servant and that Job would not sin against him. And he was allowing him to be tested because he had so much faith in him. And we'll see at the end how God rewards Job in a sense for the suffering. But God had not left Job. He was still there, even if Job couldn't feel him. And so that's kind of where he goes at the end of this chapter, where he talks about he lives in terror and constant misery. He has unending pain and unanswered prayers. He's calling out to God. He's crying out to God, but God doesn't answer him, and he doesn't understand why. And that's where we will leave off this section of Job. This is a good man, right? He's been through a lot of things, but now he's tired of it and he's starting to complain. And that's where we are. And we're going to see what happens next when we pick up Job next week. Until then, I will see you tomorrow back in the book of Jeremiah.